Morning, everyone. Again, it's been a while since I've posted, and that's been largely because there's been lots of stuff for me to deal with, lots of collateral matters to deal with. But I'm still good, I'm still here, I'm still managing and surviving the treatment. What it's done this past few days particularly is it's made me reflect on the concept of gifting gratitude and what the implications of that are. The reason is that when you go through a process like this, you realize who's there for you in the journey and who's abandoned you on that journey. And what I've noticed is that it's the people you've given to the most that are the most likely to abandon you. And I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I came across a talk on YouTube by the often criticized Joel Osteen, who's an American. If you don't know who he is, he's an American pastor who has a very lucrative sort of ministry in America. And much as I did not want to like him or his message, he had a particular section which was on basically take time for you. And what was interesting about it was, and it did come across, I hate to admit it, I'm not saying give to his ministry, I'm not endorsing his ministry, but it was just that particular wisdom that struck a chord with me, was if you can't help others unless you help yourself first. And if you keep giving to people, they will keep taking. That very few people appreciate the giver and what the giver is doing for them. The more you give, the more they'll take, which I suppose you might say in some quarters is there'll be those that say, well, live what you preach, etc. But I'm not getting into that because that's a different discussion altogether. And as I say, I'm not endorsing or attacking that ministry. I'm just looking at this particular set of wisdoms. And what I found in what he said, he gave an example, for example, of a pastor that was running up and down the country, going to different venues to talk to people and minister to them. And this guy he was running himself into the ground. And according to the story that he tells, he said to this minister, look, you need to take some time for yourself. You need some time to recharge. You can't keep doing this. And he said, no, I can't let my congregation down. I've got to do this. And he never made it to that congregation because he had a heart attack on the train and died. Now, what I found, this led me to the concept of giving and gratitude. And I was reminded when I started, I'm a lawyer by profession for those who've not met me before. And when I started as a trainee lawyer, one of my first clients was the victim of a massive medical negligence error. And he was a very gruff individual. He wasn't the easiest character because he'd been let down by so many lawyers and medical advisors in the past. He had very little faith in anyone offering him any genuine support. And I remember that I was able to help him a lot. Not because I'm not suggesting in any sense I was exceptional, but because I actually listened and because I actually took the time to identify what he needed and what his problems were. But the point of that, in one of our interactions, he came out with an expression, an old Shropshire expression, because this is where I was working at the time, and he said, eaten bread is soon forgot. And that haunts me as a phrase whenever I find myself in a situation where people I've done a lot for suddenly cut you loose or abandon you when you need them. Now, the point is, this concept of gratitude is bandied about a lot of late by a lot of spiritual gurus who say, oh, the secret to manifestation of desires is to express gratitude. I'm not challenging that concept particularly, but what I have noticed is that you have to see gratitude as a kind of approach rather than a transaction. I think a lot of people see gratitude as transactional. If you remember when you were a child and grandma buys you it's your birthday and you wanted, for me, I'm sure, I suppose the Americans call it G.I. Joe, or we used to call it Action Man. And you think, I want the Action Man Land Rover or something. And then Gran comes with a big box and you think, oh, thank God, here it is, the toy I've always wanted. And it turns out to be a big bag of junk, bat and ball and thing. And you go, oh. And you're disappointed because it's not what you were expecting. And then what does your mum normally say, or depending on which maternal, paternal grandparent it is? If it's the maternal grandparent, your mother will say, well, what do you say to grandma? What do you say to granddad? And if it's the other way around, and you go, thank you, grandma, granddad, and you don't mean it, but they've taught you that you've ticked the box and that therefore you've done your job. When really what they should instead instill in you is the concept that it may be a crappy present that you've been given, but they put a lot of thought into that. They really tried to make you happy. They tried to think with their limited budget or their limited understanding sometimes of what children of that generation want, tried to do their best for you. And they may have fallen short, but they were doing what they thought was their best. And this concept that we have of transactional gratitude is, yeah, cheers, mate, thanks. But that's not what gratitude is. Gratitude is, right, how can I return, not in a transactional way, how can I carry this gratitude forward into something that benefits that person, other people, myself? It's kind of like a leaping off point gratitude rather than a kind of cul-de-sac or I've ticked the box, I can move on from it. And this happens a lot with parents, with their children. Now, obviously, I'm a man, so that I can only give a man's perspective, but I'm sure this equally applies to other genders in parenting situations where you give and give and give to your partner and your children. And because you're doing it from love, you give to the point of giving beyond your capacity to give. And the problem is that instead of deepening your connection with somebody, what you're actually doing is creating a sort of a kind of resistance, a kind of tolerance to your level of giving and support, where people start saying, yeah, but this porridge is too hot or too cold. Oh, couldn't you have got me the white sofa? And this isn't, couldn't you have got me the latest iPhone? And the problem is then they feel deprived. They start expressing instead of expressing how grateful they are, they're sort of whining because it wasn't quite the iPhone they wanted, or it wasn't quite the outfit that they wanted, or it wasn't the car that they wanted. And parents up and down the land are breaking their hearts, trying to keep pace with the expectations of their partners, of whatever gender they may be, of their children, and bleeding themselves white and running themselves into the ground. And that's where I suspect a lot of the depression comes from, a lot of the unhappiness comes from, because people in giving are giving because they want to give the person that they care about the best experience of life. But what ends up happening is they run themselves into the ground, they put on weight, they get in poor health. I mean, again, it sounds like I've signed up to this, Joel, but he came out with something And he said, it's easier to prevent ill health than to recover from it. And you need to recognize that in giving, if you give everything you've got, people will still come back for your bones if you let them. And you have to have, you've got a right to be on this earth too. Which brings me back to my own situation and dealing with cancer is you've got to have your own sense of life purpose. You can't spend your life just reacting to cancer treatments, because that does become involuntarily a habit. What you want to do is say, look, I'm going to get on with my life. This is what I want to do with my life. And I'm putting one foot in front of the other on this path. Now, because of this cancer, I may not go down this path as fast as I like. It may derail me from time to time. It may mean that I have to pause from time to time along this road. But I'm still on it and I'm still going down it. Now, that's not... People have different levels of exposure to cancer treatment. And I'm not having a go at anyone who's having a really tough time of it. But even if you're having a tough time of it physically, and even if you're having a tough time of it mentally, you can still rebel. You can still find some way of saying, I might feel like this now, but I won't feel like this tomorrow. But I still want to do this, no matter how laid down or laid back or how, damaged I am by this. I'm still going to keep on this road. I'm still moving towards that goal. So what I'm saying in closing is, look after yourself. Look after you first. Take care of your life, your journey, your purpose first. Don't give in to cancer. Don't give to cancer. Don't give your focus, your time, your attention, your love to cancer. And equally, when you give in to loved ones, give in a way that is beneficial to them, by all means, but also allows you to recover, allows you time to keep going and live your best life also, so that you're in the best health, because if you're dead, you can't help anyone. Even Jesus, and whether you believe in him or not, as a story, as a concept, if you accept the concept that this was a holy person who drew crowds, etc., who seems to have been confident and capable of all these miracles, or any other prophet for that matter, they still took time out. They still needed time away. They still needed to recharge. They still needed to go to some other place to relax, to put their nutrition back on track, to exercise, to rebuild, to recharge, so that they could go back out and do their job. And that's what I'm saying to you, lovely people. Thank you for all your kind messages. Thank you for your support. I'm deeply grateful. I try to incorporate your wisdom and your experiences into my own evolving thoughts on this and this situation that I'm in. I'm very grateful for the feedback. Thank you. Thank you also for directing me towards other helpful sources, etc. That's really gratefully appreciated. And thank you for just being there and listening to me prattle on about my own experiences. I love you all. Thank you very much.